The first bullet, it's shocking. It's second bullet, and you're facing death. With this scar, I faced death in the eye. And you know what goes through my mind? Because there's no one to help. There's no one you can call on. There's not a mom, a dad, a wife, a kid. You call on your creator, God. God help. I believe any person, the gangsters are scared. Yes, they are scared. And that is what making them so most dangerous. Tell me a person who's not scared to die. I'm scared, but I have the peace because I know where I'm going when I die. They know.
What for you? And the sentence on you is death! Allahu Akbar! Death to Naka!
Death to Naka!
Death to Jackie Lonte! Death to Ahmed Kasbah! Death to Pat! Get my bruise, man! Get man! Allahu Akbar!
This is Rashaad Staggie. He, along with his twin brother, Rashaad, were the founders and leaders of one of the most wanted and most violent gang in Cape Town, the Hard Livings Gang. On the 4th of August 1996, Rashaad Staggie was shot and burned alive by a group of over 100 heavily armed Muslim men, who called themselves the People Against Gangsterism, or PAGAD for short, during a shootout that the men were having with his twin brother, Rashaad Staggie, at his home in Salt River, Cape Town. During the confrontation, members of PAGAD shot Staggie as he stepped out of his white truck, before setting him on fire, watching him burn and then continuously hitting and kicking him. Some accounts from eyewitnesses say that members of PAGAD were chanting for Staggie to die as he burned. His charred body laid in the road across his brother's house for hours, before it could be retrieved. Sadly, his brother, Rashaad, who miraculously survived that night, would also suffer the same fate just 23 years after his brother's death. He was shot dead outside his house while he was sitting in his car. He was shot over 23 times. He was found dead by his daughter 2 hours after the shooting happened. Both the twins, Rashaad and Rashaad Staggie, were killed in the exact same street. This is Jackie Lonte. He was the founder and leader of the Americans Gang, one of the most feared and largest gang in Cape Town. Under his leadership, the Americans Gang became the largest gang operating in all corners of Cape Town, with dominance in mostly colored communities. At that time, his gang had over 5,000 members. Before his death, Jackie Lonte was famously known as the man who formerly introduced crack cocaine and also crystal meth within the drug markets of Cape Town. Before he died, Jackie Lonte was arrested for killing a man, but he was later released on bail. 2 months before Jackie Lonte's death, his brother, Harold Lonte, who was also a leader within the Americans gangs, was killed in a drive-by shooting in his home in Athlone, Cape Town. On the day that Jackie Lonte was murdered, a white VW Golf pulled up outside his home. 2 men carrying R5 rifles climbed out and then began to swear at him. Then, they started to open fire. Lonte was shot over 50 times. He tried to escape the hail of bullets coming towards him, but sadly, he died on the pavement just outside his home. A few days after the murder of Jackie Lonte, Notorious gang leader, Pepper Peters, was shot while he was sitting in his blue BMW, just outside his home, in the Cape Flats. Luckily he survived that ordeal. However, after a week being in the hospital, 2 men, who were carrying R5 rifles, entered the hospital that he was kept in, and shot him to death. When he was at the hospital, Pepper had said that he was leaving his past life of selling drugs and killing people behind, and that he would now focus on bettering himself and God, since he had been given a second chance in life. This is Dimes Matted, a Mitchell's Plain gang leader. He was shot 2 times in the arm, but luckily survived. In order to survive his masked assassins, he had to lay in his own pool of blood and pretended to be dead. 2 of his friends were killed that night. By the late 90s to early 2000s, PAGAD had overstepped the mark. having racked up over 600 incidents of urban terror. As police started closing the net on the organization, they'd taken to eliminating key witnesses. They bombed the offices of the local serious crimes unit. They bombed gay nightclubs and synagogues. Most infamously, they killed 1 and injured 27 in bombing the local Planet Hollywood restaurants. They murdered the investigating police officer, Captain Benny Latigan, who was working on a case to bring down the organization. It was the murder of a magistrate who was presiding over a PAGAD affiliates case in 2002 that brought down the organization, whereby the high command went to jail and the vigilantes went away. In 1996, the People Against Gangsterism and Drugs started what would be one of the most bloodiest wars in Cape Town, with gang leaders and drug kingpins. Their protests, which attracted over 2,000 former gang members, were caused by the rising number of homicides done by gangs within the Cape Flats area. PAGAD was formed by former gang members and local priests, who were mostly colored Muslims. The group was formed during a time when the Notorious Five ruled and controlled the streets of Cape Town, with murders happening every single day. The Notorious Five were 5 gangs: the Hard Livings Gang, which was controlled by Rashaad and Rashaad Staggie, and is the largest organized crime gang in South Africa; the Americans Gang, which was controlled by Jackie Lonte; the Mongrels Gang, which was controlled by John Mongrel; the Numbers Gang, which was also led by John Mongrel; and also the Sexy Boys Gang. These 5 gangs have been in a bloody war with each other for years, with multiple shootouts occurring within Cape Town that has also taken the lives of innocent children. This, and also the failure of the local police to fight the drug trade which was happening in Cape Town, were the main reasons that the vigilante group PAGAD was formed. PAGAD would continuously march in the homes of gang leaders, and warn them that they would be executed if they don't stop their illegal activities. The South African Police Service started monitoring PAGAD in early 1996, and soon heard about a series of farms and shooting ranges, where over 100 members of the organization received training for their military campaign against the gangsters. During this time, PAGAD was only organizing peaceful marches in the streets of Cape Town. They were also trying to recruit more people to join the organization. With all this going on, the South African Police Service ignored the warnings about the danger that PAGAD may pose in the future. This was largely because of how militant the group was. It was in July 1996, when over 100 masked PAGAD members marched in the center of Cape Town, where one of the leaders of the group would issue a death list of gang leaders who must be executed. Soon after this speech was made, PAGAD's bloody war with South African gang leaders began.
The greatest death squad for you, and the sentence on you is death! Allahu Akbar! Death to Naka!
Death to Naka!
Death to Jackie Lonte! Death to Ahmed Kasbah! Death to Pat! Death to Potter! Death to Kapti! Death to Nan! Death to Staggie! Death to Meis! Death to Frankie D! Death to the twins! Rashaad and Rashaad! The Staggies! The sentence on you is death! Death to Bali Evans! If you do not give yourself up, in the following week, we will put out our swords and we will strike you for trying to destroy our children.
On the 4th of August, only a few days after this speech, a group of 2,000 PAGAD members, who were all armed with firearms, marched towards 20 London Road, a street which was known to be a base for smuggling activities conducted by members of the Hard Livings Gang, of which Mr. Staggie and his brother were the leaders of. These men were heading towards Rashaad Staggie's house. The Staggie twins were notorious gang members who have been dealing drugs since they were 14 years old. They were the creators and leaders of the Cape Town-based Hard Livings Gang, which was the largest gang in South Africa at that time, with over 5,000 members. The Hard Livings Gang participated in a range of crimes, such as armed robberies, gun dealings, and also drug distribution. Under the rule of the Staggie twins, the Hard Livings Gang took part in violent gang wars that led to a bloodbath in the streets of Cape Town. During PAGAD's invasion of Rashaad Staggie's home, guns were fired from both the Hard Livings Gang members and the PAGAD members. The police would then arrive a few moments later, but they were severely overwhelmed by the amount of PAGAD members who were there, who were all armed, with intent to take Rashaad Staggie's life. His twin brother, Rashaad Staggie, would arrive in a white truck a few moments later to assist his brother Rashaad, who was trapped inside his home by PAGAD gunmen. Members of the group, including Abraham, who was the leader, identified him, after which a group of about 50 supporters approached his vehicle. Rashaad was then pulled out of his car and then tries to make it to his brother's front door, but a wall of bullets makes it impossible. But he refuses to die by sheer effort of will. After all, he's a man with a reputation in this town. Despite the continuous beatings he received, he keeps on living, so the PAGAD members began to pour petrol on him, and then began to light him on fire, to burn him alive. Still burning, and shot multiple times, Rashaad began to run down an alley, getting slower and slower, before finally kneeling over on the pavement. Still not dead, the PAGAD members would continuously beat and kick the body of Rashaad Staggie, while he was still on fire, and also while his brother was watching it all happen right in front of his house, but was unable to do anything about it. This was one of the most brutal murders in the history of the Cape Town gangland. It was after this brutal murder that the South African Police Service would eventually regard PAGAD part of the problem, rather than a partner, in the fight against gangsterism. The group was eventually regarded as a terrorist organization by the South African government, and a most wanted list was issued for the leaders. During the attack on Rashaad Staggie, police were unable to intervene and assist the dying man, as there were PAGAD snipers on the roofs of the surrounding buildings. Rashaad's lifeless body would lay in the road for about 2 hours, before it could be retrieved by emergency services. Shortly after this happened, PAGAD members went on to hold a meeting in a mosque, which was not far from.
What happens when you put your trust in Allah? And yes, we can clear our society and rid our society of that scum.
The death of Rashaad Staggie started a vicious spiral of violence between PAGAD, the gangsters, and the South African Police Service. According to police intelligence, a total of 68 gangsters were targeted by PAGAD between March and July 1998. 24 gang leaders were killed and many were assassinated after this period.
Dis twee kinders op 'n bakkie wat geskiet gewees het. Daar's 'n kind in die wen wat doodgeskiet gewees het. Hier's 'n kind in die jaat, 'n innocent klong wat hulle gevat het en hom net so brutal doodgeskiet het.
Lonte was one of the most notorious gang leaders in Cape Town. He was also in the death list of PAGAD. Lonte is said to have been the first person to sell crack cocaine within Cape Town, alongside his gang, the Americans gang. This is an interview that Lonte was featured in, whereby he explained how PAGAD assassinated his brother in a drive-by shooting earlier that year. Only a few days after doing this interview, Lonte, who was once considered untouchable, was fatally shot and killed with an R5 rifle by PAGAD members. According to his relatives, Lonte had received several threats before being assassinated, and the night before his death, PAGAD members were spotted outside his home. According to a witness, a white VW Golf pulled up outside Lonte's home. 2 men climbed out, swore at Lonte, and then opened fire. Lonte tried to escape, but died on the pavement outside his house. Peters, who was one of the gang leaders targeted by PAGAD, was also shot and paralyzed in a drive-by shooting while he was sitting in his blue BMW. PAGAD members would eventually visit him to finish him off while he was in the hospital. He was shot 4 times and died instantly. In March of that year, 28-year-old female gang leader, Katie Anna Rentz, from the Firm gang, was killed along with her husband while they were sitting in their car, outside one of their tarvans, which they owned in Mitchell's Plain. Over the Easter holidays, PAGAD members would again take the life of another gang member who was a second-in-command within the Hard Livings gang. Days later, another top Hard Livings gangster, Ivan Oliver, was gunned down in his car. No one was arrested for all these murders.